Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid and continuing our preview of the 2025 season by looking at the plays and the schemes that are going to help propel the Badgers forward. And I'm going to pivot a little bit from what I had intended to do with this next one and go a little bit deeper because it brings into questions that I've gotten many times over the past 2 years, and that all centers around the punt scheme. And why do the Badgers use this rollout punt scheme that is so different than traditional punting that you'd see in the NFL, etc.? Well, so what we're going to do is we're going to break down the scheme a little bit, and then we're going to take a look at some film clips of the Badgers from last season running their punt scheme, and we can look and see where the advantages come in on the field. So first and foremost, why you see teams use punt schemes like the rollout punt, like the shield punt, the advantage comes from the fact that college rules are different than the NFL. In the NFL, the coverage team can't go downfield until the ball's kicked. So in situations like that, it changes how teams have to cover and how teams have to kick the ball. So with a traditional punt system where you're leaving on the ball being kicked, the emphasis is on hang time and allowing your coverage team to get downfield as quickly as possible. That doesn't change with some of these college schemes, but with the fact that the coverage team can get downfield on the snap, that changes how the idea of coverage is perceived. And so it changes what we can do in terms of protection, and it changes what we're going to do after the kick. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go in the huddle. We're going to talk about two of these traditional college punt schemes that we see now. I guess traditional wouldn't be the word, be more modern interpretation of the punt scheme. And I look back at kind of one that the Badgers used previously, and then talk about the scheme of the rollout punt, and then we're going to take a look at some examples of the Badgers using it. All right, so let's get in the huddle here. Okay, so with punting, we're going to look at two different versions. We're going to look at first the shield punt, which is kind of where this style of coverage, punt coverage, started, and then we'll move into the rollout punt. So a shield punt is any variation of where you're going to see essentially a wall at anywhere from 5 to 7, maybe a little bit more yards away from the front line. We're going to put our punter anywhere from 14 to as many as 19 yards back. It depends on how good your long snapper is, but in that 15-yard range. And then we're going to spread everybody else out on the front line. Okay, so first things first, let's get these guys lined up how they would be more likely in a scheme. You see teams do things differently. I use the shield punt, and what I do to keep things simple is I just have everybody on my front line have about 2 yards of spacing in between them. For me, this widens the surface enough of the defense where I'm not worried about anybody coming off the edge, and it allows me to get my players downfield in coverage much easier. All right, so when it comes to the defenders, or the blocking, I'm just going to throw in some bodies here, because you're going to see a lot of different ways that teams will cover this. And I know it's going to look wonky here. It's because Huddle does not give me in the special teams options a lot of space to do this. So this is actually a defensive setup in huddle. It's a little bit off, but we'll make it work. So I'm just going to put 7 bodies in here in the box just for the sake of having them. All right. So first things first, let's talk about the wedge. Teams will do it differently, how they line up these guys inside. What I do is I put my 2 outside guys in my wall at usually 7 yards, and I got these guys too close, so let's get them back a little bit. Come on, huddle, work with me. Whatever, that guy's going to go there, that guy's going to go there. All right, and then I'm going to put this third guy hinged as open as he can to allow space for the kick to get, or for the snap, to get through. Once the ball has been snapped, he is going to step down, and they are going to create a tight wall at about 5 to 7 yards, depending on how long I can get of a snap. If I can get a longer snap at 19, I might put them back at 10. But I'm usually at about 14, so we'll put them at 7. My front line guys, how I'm going to set this up is a lot like wide zone blocking, and I'm going to tell everybody in this front 7 that, with the exception of the long snapper, on the kick, the long snapper is just going to go. I'm just going to send this guy. Is everybody in this front, they are going to open, and they're going to look to block the first guy who tries to cross their face to their kick side. And for demonstration purposes here, it's going to be to our right. So we're going to open and look for the first guy to our right. Open and look to the first guy to our right. And huddle is being weird. Open to the right. Open to the right. Open to the right. And if I have nobody to my right, I'm just going to go. Okay. Now, when we open like this, we're going to look to get our hands inside and steering wheel what I call this defender. Once that defender, as I'm resisting against him, gets to my hip, I'm going to let him go, and then I'm going to release into my coverage. So we're going to wall him. I'm going to get there. I'm going to wall him out, and then I'm going to release. That is, and yeah, huddle's being weird, but you get my drift. Okay? If I open up and I have nobody, I'm going to make sure nobody crosses my gap, and I'm going to go. And I'm going to go. If I got somebody, I'm going to control them, and I'm going to go. If I'm free, I'm going to release. And what this should end up happening, if we look at how these defenders are right here, just looking at these 7 guys right here, okay, I'm going to block 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to leave anybody else in these A gaps for the inside. If they put more defenders up on the box, the way that this should work out, as long as they're not rushing 4 or more in the A gaps right in here, we should have enough to block everybody and get the kickoff. Okay? That's when we're looking at protection. But one very key thing with this shield punt, and why I like it and why a lot of teams use it, is if you have a consistent snapper and a consistent punter who can catch, get the ball set, and get it off his foot in a timely manner, usually under a second and a half, you don't need anybody to block at all. Really, you don't. The wedge is just there to help widen the rush lanes to make sure that we have clear space up the middle to get this kickoff. It's not even necessary about blocking it. But yes, teams will send big bodies, strong bodies, and try to blow this wall up and send it back. I put offensive linemen here, so they ain't getting pushed back. So the only time I'm ever going to have problems in my punt team is if we get a bad snap or my punter doesn't catch the ball for some reason. But this whole movement gets my protection and gets me 7 bodies going downfield. So hopefully, if I get a good kickoff, that returner is going to catch the ball, and he's going to have 7 defenders sitting right at him. Long snapper's taking off right off the snap. I'm usually going to have at least one of my gunners getting a complete free release, if not both of them. And I can move things around if I want to. I get that protection. And it allows me to cover a lot of space in coverage and get a lot of bodies downfield. That's why I use it. Now, when it comes to the rugby punt and the rollout punt, that changes things a little bit. And we're going to get into that next and talk about the advantages of using the rollout punt. All right, so let's talk about the rollout punt. And what the rollout punt does is it takes the advantages of the shield punt in terms of getting bodies downfield in coverage, but then it also works on the idea of not having to defend the entire field. And you see this with kickoffs in college, where teams will line up their kickoff coverage where maybe the widest person to one side is only a few yards outside the hash mark. That's because they set up to directional kick, put the ball towards a sideline, and then they work to contain from one hash mark to the far sideline instead of working the entire field. A rugby punt and rollout punt is essentially the same thing. By moving the kicker and moving the kick point, it is much easier to be accurate with directional punting because you're just kicking straight forward instead of having to turn your hips as you're kicking and be more precise with your angles. And when you get athletes who are used to kicking the ball on the move, this kind of movement is second nature. That's why most of these guys are Australian, to be honest. But guys who come from soccer backgrounds can pick this up as well. So the idea is to move that kick point. Have this front 7 or whatever of the punt return team have to focus on the punter. Because if they do not respect his pushing of the boundary to the wide side of the field or to the edge of the formation, as we saw against Penn State, he could just take off, especially if one guy misses. All right, but the idea is we're going to move that pocket, we're going to move that kick, and we're going to try to put the ball on one side of the field. So what you're going to see a lot of times with these roll-up punts is you're going to see the front 5 kind of work in a split roll, where it's kind of like the Badgers run with their wide zone in the offense, is front side guys are going to work to control the outside shoulder of the guys on their side, and guys on the backside are going to almost like step and hinge, and it's kind of hard to demonstrate step and hinge in drawing form, but we're going to roll out. We're going to try to keep them as square to the line of scrimmage as we can, keep them on the line, and then we're going to release. Same thing here. We're going to make sure, you're thinking almost 1,001, 1,002, whatever, making sure that this defender doesn't cross our face to the ball, and then we're going to release. Outside guys are working straight to the ball. Backside guys looking to squeeze to his landmark. Usually it's going to be the hash mark on the side of the field that he's on. His job is to make sure the ball doesn't get beyond the hash mark. Defender on the or a gunner on the other side, he's usually going to work to get inside release and then press vertically so he can use the sideline to help him, but then also work to press this returner back towards the sideline because we want to kick the ball more in here. Okay, and then everyone in here, we're going to work on our landmarks, and we're going to work on our lanes, and we're going to go from there. The wedge guys here, they're kind of working, they're just going to work lateral to the line of scrimmage, again, making sure that they're not losing ground, and then they're going to fit lanes. We're going to look to clean up, and we're going to basically look to backside and making sure we're getting nothing across the face. Punter wants to hold on to the ball as long as he can, that he can stay in rhythm, and then we're going to get rid of the football, and hopefully we're going to kick it on our the good side of the hash mark that we're rolling to. By doing this, we create time for our coverage team to get downfield. By doing that, we distract the punt coverage team, or punt return team, excuse me. And this all adds up to less opportunities for a return. And as long as the rules are set up in this way where this type of coverage is going to be used, or this type, the rules are where you release downfield whenever you want, as long as those are in effect, you're going to see teams using this. Guarantee you, if the NFL changed to the college rules and allowed the coverage team to go downfield as soon as the snap is, you see a lot more punt teams like this. But because of how the rules are set up, they use the one that is the most traditional and the one that's been used forever. And again, the change in coverage comes from the kick and not so much how the coverage team gets downfield. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to go into the film, and we're going to take a look at some examples of the Badgers running their punt coverage from the 2024 season. All right, we're here with the film. We're going to take a look at some examples of Wisconsin punting last season, and we can see this rollout punt in practice. All right. So here we're coming out. This is their basic punt formation. They'll vary things around a little bit, but for the most part, we're going to have 5 across the front line, a wing, and an up back. And then one of these two players sometimes will move around a little bit, but this is the general look. And what we're going to get here on the takeoff, on the snap, is we're going to get a hinge on the backside to make sure we're not getting any bodies coming across the formation. Usually that shouldn't be an issue. And then we're going to release. Front side, we're just going to roll down the line, and we want to get out before that kick comes. Again, the benefit of college rules is we don't have to wait. We can just get downfield. And kicks off. We get some nice distance, and what I really like about the rollout punt, and we're going to see it dinged off of a Western Michigan player here, but is just how unpredictable the bounces can be and really how hard it can be for the punt returner to track. And the examples I pick for you guys to see here, this is a pretty much a random sampling of how they use this season. Watch how many of these kicks end up being caught cleanly. And you see everything, here is done on purpose. Like, little thing here. If we look at Atticus, when he drops it, he's dropping it with the laces down, not necessarily down. They're not completely on his foot, but they're inside, towards the inside of his foot. That is on purpose. Why? Because that is what's going to give him this kind of curving action, and when it hits the ground, it's going to tail to the side. That is someone who knows the football. Obviously, this comes from his background playing Aussie rules in Australia, but he knows how that ball is going to come off his foot. And we get a nice, really hard to catch kick here, and we end up getting it dinged off of a player, and we get a turnover. All right, next up here, this is against South Dakota. So this is the other kind of basic punt formation we would see here. We'd see this against a little more defenses that play a little more balanced. So we still got our 5 across the line, and we got our wing, and this time, except our up back being behind, he's going to be off to the side. This will change the protection a little bit, where they're worried a little bit more of pressure coming inside. So you got Witt here scanning A gaps. You got Jackson Aker looking a little bit more B gap. And then you got our 2. We got Raleigh Lukowski and Jaheim Thomas working to the outside. But again, by the time the ball's in the air, look how far downfield we've got. Is that Bryson Green? Or is that Austin Brown? I can't always tell with the numbers. But ball's in the air. We are already 12 yards downfield. Or even farther in our gunner on this side. So by the time the ball gets to the returner, we've already got bodies there. And we've already got coverage coming from the second level of coverage. So that, again, is the benefit of this rollout punt, where, we're not just catching it and taking 2 steps. It takes time. We create time by the lateral movement of the rollout, and that allows our coverage team to get downfield. And we make nice play here, good coverage. Again, you're going to see a lot of situations here with Atticus where we just don't get a return against us. All right, next up here. So we're playing a little bit wider here in alignment because Alabama is going to try to really bring pressure off the outside edge and try to get Atticus to step up here more. He doesn't really fall for it. So again, we get that kind of knuckle type kick here where we turn the laces in. We get that turnover and we get a roll. Another thing that is, it's a subtle thing that people don't realize that gives Atticus Bertrams the advantage. He's lefty, so the ball spins off his foot differently than punt returners are mostly used to seeing. And that makes it even harder for them to track. All right, again against Alabama, we're a little more balanced here because we're going to show that just because we sometimes roll out, or most of the time roll out, we are capable of taking a normal punt return or a punt. But when we get a situation here, Rico gets a little wide. Also, I'm pretty sure just by looking at the release here, Atticus was not supposed to kick it to his right. He should have kicked it to his left. But we still end up getting downfield, but because we get rid of the ball a little bit quicker than we're used to, we don't quite have the coverage downfield, and Alabama gets a pretty good return. Okay, against Purdue here, using motion, this is just, obviously we're always going to roll to our left because Atticus is a left-footed punter. This movement is just to indicate how Purdue is going to adjust based on movement, because if they don't move with this guy, that sets up everything for a world of fakes, etc. So we get a good shot. Pay attention here. All right, so one thing I'm noticing here, okay, we're dropping the nose down a little bit, trying to get a little more end-over-end kick this time. And again, when punt returners are used to catching spiraling punts to get an end-over-end kick, it's different, and that can make things difficult to cover or to catch. Okay, one little thing I really want you guys to be paying attention to this is how many what you consider first team or at least contributors on both sides of the ball are on the punt team. We're looking here, and who's the gunner? It's Will Pauling. And our long snapper's right there. Okay, Vinny Anthony. Getting some real contributors. All right, next punt up here. Okay, a little bit of getting that roll, but we're purposely bringing it back to the middle of the field with the kick. Hunter Wohlers has the contain here, and again, dropping those laces inside to get that curve back to the middle of the field is really making it difficult for these B1G returners to catch the ball. It's a little thing, but it really works. You get so much extra time to get your coverage team, downfield, but when they get there, the returners are getting a much more difficult to catch product. All right, so next up here, we've got a little overload formation. Okay, we're going to extend on the outside wide, get an extra defender out or an extra coverage guy outside. This is probably in paying attention to what Penn State likes to do coverage-wise, or return-wise, excuse me, that they'll match up, get a little less bodies in the box, and you can see Penn State's kind of rolling back on this, kind of almost like a trap, kind of a stunt. And so that's what we do here. So we're still giving the rollout look here, but because we have the extra defender outside to our kicking team's left, we still have the coverage, so we can turn that coverage around and kick back the other way. So we're setting up time, we're gaining time with the rollout to the left, but we're coming back with a kick to the right. And because of how Penn State lines up in their punt return, we know we're going to have time to get this off and get it to the outside. And again, we get in the bodies downfield, and that's a great tackle, again, by Will Pauling. All right, let's look at, we'll look at one more here. Then I think we've kind of seen what we're looking at here. So a little different here. We're a little bit wider here on the front side to our left. And the reason why they can do that is they know that Iowa is going to widen with them. And they know that their punt return, they're lining up on shoulders on the front level, and then they're going to have their rushers sit in gaps behind. But now they're just looking to trap the outside. So they're showing heavy to the roll side, and they're going to drop 6 out. And they catch Pauling not paying attention. He gets caught up. But we do a really good job here, coverage everybody else. All right, control. Everyone's running in their lanes. Nobody's running over each other. And then we just stretch out the return to the middle of the field, and we get the face mask, but of course, what would be a Wisconsin football season without something stupid like that happening, right? All right, so there's some examples of the rollout punt. Again, it's not for everybody, but with, like we said in the beginning, the advantages of using the rollout punt come from the fact that in college rules, the coverage team is allowed to go downfield right away on the snap. This opens up kick styles like this that can facilitate better coverage. And that's the name of the game. In pro football, punters have 15 punts in their bag that they can use to try to manipulate the returners. In college football, we maybe have less options in terms of that, but we have more options in terms of coverage that can negate some of the lack of creativity, so to speak, with the punters, with the kicks. Taking advantage of guys like Atticus Bertrams, the Australians, who kicking the ball is natural to them, taking what they know and applying it to American football. And if we ever see the rules change in the NFL, you'll see this type of punt take over for sure, because NFL special teams coaches want nothing more than ways to stop returners. All right. So that's it for this in focus on the Wisconsin punt game. This will also probably serve as the last all 22 film project I have, at least for a while, until I can figure out another source for the all 22. Still going to be watching film together. Might be a little different. We'll find ways, new ways to get more involved in more detail with that broadcast film than we had before. So we're not going anywhere with the Dairy Rave. Thank you for watching. See you next time.